Welcome back to Creating Cooperative Kids. I'm your host, Bill Corbett. Bridging the gap between generations is never an easy task. I find it personally challenging when I'm with my elderly parents, knowing what to talk about to make the most of our time together. But what if there was a way to facilitate a discussion with our elderly parents that created more closeness for a stronger relationship? My next guest may have just the answer. Kathie Nitz is a life strategist, inspirational speaker, and innovator, and most important to her, a caregiver to her mom with dementia. She's the creator of Caring Cards, a product that promotes meaningful connections in addition to providing an opportunity to preserve a loved one's legacy. Kathie is a professionally trained life and relationship coach and a certified senior advisor who helps her clients successfully navigate life's transitions, especially the challenges of elder care, with her eyes and hearts wide open. Welcome to the show, Kathie.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
The first thing I want to get out there is what are the most common challenges for us, the sandwich generation? Now, to clarify, sandwich generation is any of us who are still raising kids at home, and we also seem to be parenting our parents as well.
Absolutely. Well, I think two things. I think, first of all, the sandwich generation, the person in the middle, typically doesn't recognize the stress that they're under, and then they often also don't feel appreciated or heard or respected. So that causes a lot of frustration for them.
And it can be, you're right, and I'm feeling that myself because I'm finding myself driving 3 hours one way to where my parents live because I want to support them having their independence. But I wonder what call I'm going to get this week, about who's fallen or who tried to drive and shouldn't have or whatever.
Right.
And in the meantime, I'm trying to get teenagers out the door to school every day.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I'm feeling it very personally. So why does that seem to happen? Why does it seem to happen?
Well, you're a good example of it, so we can talk about it. So first of all, oftentimes we don't recognize the role that we play in it. So for instance, there's a role that you're playing in contributing to those challenges. One of them might be that you don't take enough time for yourself to kind of decompress or to regroup or to reground. You just, like you just said, you're flying here, there, and everywhere. So that can create stress. In addition to that, I think it has a lot to do with we won't speak up sometimes because we want to avoid conflict. We don't want to create conflict, so we don't say things, but then we wind up swallowing things and not talking about things, and that builds up and causes stress too.
There's something else I want to add in there. I think sometimes the children, the grown children, us, I often hear and I have in my situation where I'm the one running up there and others couldn't be bothered. And I think it's a dilemma, it's a problem, and I'm not sure what it is, but all I know is I feel obligated, I feel compelled. I wouldn't even think of not going if they called me for help, whereas some of my siblings may not do that. But it's interesting that you created something called the Caring Cards, and I think it's a great example of how we might just need a vehicle to start that conversation. So the first thing I want to know is, why did you create these?
Well, I was inspired because of my own caregiver journey with my mom. She started to show signs of dementia, and what happened was as her dementia continued to progress, she looked to me more and more for the conversation starting. So we'd sit at lunch and she'd ask me 10 times in 15 minutes whether we'd ordered lunch or not. And I knew that she had stories in her, and I knew that I wanted to talk to her, but sometimes I just didn't have conversation in me. Sometimes I was tired or I didn't have anything new to share the day before. If you're seeing your parents a lot, you know what that's like. And so by coming up with prompts to start conversation, what it allowed me to do was take the caregiver hat off and to be able to just sit there and be her daughter and just talk to her and look her in the eyes and listen to her stories and learn new things about her.
And it's interesting, and I don't know whether he did this intentionally or it's just by chance. What I noticed that my father does is he turns on the headline news, CNN headline news, and they recycle their news every 15 minutes. And so every time my mom sees this news story, she thinks it's brand new. She's calling everyone to the television to look at what just happened. And while I was first amused with that, and I'd look at my father waiting to see some sort of laughter, but he would go right along, go, yes, that's amazing. And perhaps he did that to to keep her busy and thinking throughout the day. But the problem with that is she wants to talk about that incident over and over and over.
Right,
And so
right.
I felt really frustrated about the fact, although it was funny, the humor kind of wore off after a while because she wants to talk about any related incidents over and over as well. And I thought that your cards were great, so I had to give them a shot. I had to try them out. And in
what
front
was the result?
of my parents, and it was amazing. There was, what I loved about your cards is that it gave me questions to ask that I probably wouldn't have thought of. I wouldn't have thought of because why? I'm so frustrated.
Right.
I'm like, Mom,
Right.
you've already asked me if it's going to rain today about 20 times.
That's right.
And so my frustration, I think us, the adult children, get so frustrated. It's hard for us to process and come up with something realistic.
That's it, and they often talk about redirecting or join them on their journey. Well, that's great, but how do you do that? So, redirecting just to redirect is one thing, but this is a way of redirecting them and holding their attention. And I remember the first time I used them with my mom when I tested them. I mean, oftentimes as caregivers, we'll take them in our car and they'll go along with us on errands, or we'll sit and visit with them, but we don't engage them. They're witnesses to our lives. And so the first time I used those with her, she got out of my car and she said, "Oh, I felt so included today." She said, and I realized it was because I had engaged her, that I had looked her in the eye and asked her questions. So I'm sure that you found when you asked your parents those questions, like the first card in the deck, to give an example, is how do you know if someone loves you? And it's there for a reason, exactly. Because I asked my mom that and she said, "Oh, well, that's easy, you feel it." And I said, "Well, what does it feel like?" And she said, "It's warm and soft." Well, gosh, isn't that love? I mean, I never would have had that answer from her. Now she really is not able to communicate enough to answer these questions. So that's a response that I'll remember the rest of my life.
Well, you know what I was thinking? First of all, I had a couple of hours before I had to take her to her appointment, and I'll always try to drive them so they won't, right? And I'm thinking, oh boy, how am I going to kill 3 hours before the appointment? But then, before I know it, we got to go. But then the great thing was my mother was like, "Okay, next question." She was like waiting for the next one.
Right.
And you're right, I got information I never would have gotten if I were left to my own devices.
Exactly.
And then I started thinking, gosh, you know what? I should videotape these sessions.
Absolutely.
Because then there's going to be a point, like you said, where they can't answer the questions.
Yes.
They're too far gone.
And that's part of the goal, is preserving legacy as well. So it's great for conversation and then also to preserve legacy. The other thing, talking about the different generations and being the sandwich generation, kids, get them to put down their phones or electronic gadgets. What often happens when families come together, like holidays or for family reunions and things, there's that flurry of activity that, "Oh, you look great, it's wonderful to see you, this is so great." And about 5 or 10 minutes in, the kids are back on the electronics. Sometimes the parents are. People are looking at their watches. The adult, the elders are looking out the window, or they're not engaged. And so these things are great because it brings them together, and it allows the younger generation to find similarities with the elders. So it's a great way for them to say, oh, they had a popular dance when they were young, or what was their favorite treat when they were a kid. It's a lot of fun.
So now I need to ask you, and for this, for the digital age, are you creating an app?
No, intentionally. You know why?
Why?
Because imagine, I was just certain I was going to do that. But if you're on your phone, what am I doing? They don't really, right? And a text comes through, or a calendar pops up. So I immediately thought, well, no, that defeats the whole purpose. So the purpose really is that good old-fashioned eye-to-eye, sitting around the table together.
Yeah, that's so good. When I got to the question to ask my folks, what are some of your favorite smells? That conversation went on for a while, and I thought, I never would have thought of asking that question. But the best part for me, lucky for me, I have both my parents still, and they're sitting side by side on the love seat. And so they kind of, it started a dialogue between the two of them, and my dad would go, "Really?" And he's looking at her, and it was a great time. And I'm like, wow, this is terrific. I mean, here's a question. Who were your oldest living relatives when you were a child, and what do you remember from them? When I asked this question, I learned stuff about my great-great-grandparents I did not know.
And we think we know, we've known them our whole lives, right? So we think we know everything? Yeah.
How did you come up with all these questions? Did you have a team of people to help you, or?
Well, I really thought a lot about what I'd want to know about my mom. I had a lot of influence, a lot of people kind of contributing to the questions, but they're all open-ended questions that spans their whole lifetime. And the important thing, especially if you're working with someone with dementia, it doesn't matter, like at some point my mom answered them differently every single time. It doesn't matter. Relax, and the most important thing is the looking to each other's eyes, being together, having conversation. It's not the accuracy of the answers at some point. It's really just to have the communication. And they know it. They know that you are giving them their full attention, which is why my mom said, I felt so included today. So.
And what's also great is one question can actually trigger and generate conversation for a good half hour. I remember asking, I forgot what the question was, but I learned something about my great-grandfather I didn't know, and that took us in a totally different direction, but it was like, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I've learned stuff I would not have known.
Well, you bring up a good point. Really just follow the thread of the conversation. And like you said, it might take 15 minutes of one card, or they might not want to play one. And the other thing, too, is some people feel like they're being interrogated when you've got the cards and you're asking them questions. So if someone really liked to play card games or light games, lay them out, spread them out, and say, pick a card, any card, and take turns doing it. So it's been very rewarding. It's been and Scouts use them for going to visit nursing homes and support groups. I mean, it really spans all abilities and ages.
Well, good for you. Congratulations, and I'm so glad that you created that device, and good luck to you. And I know what you've done is going to really kind of close that generation gap and increase the bond between kids and their parents. Thank you so much, and good luck.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Our kids are not masters of communication, but we can help them develop that skill in our guidance and mentoring. Now, coming up in my next segment, I'll be interviewing a speaker and author who will shed some light on how we can do just that. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this short break.
Limits and lessons will teach.